Mic check. Okay, hi everyone. I am Uriah Millen, and this is my lovely wife, Paula Millen, and we've been married for 21 years and going strong.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ramel Charles. This is my beautiful wife, Milan, next to me. We've been married 12 years, together 15.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dwayne James, and this is my lovely wife, Sasha James. And we've been married, going on 16 years, roughly. 15. She said 15. A little bit over 15.
I guess I'm following suit. It's because the men, I don't know if you noticed that, so no pressure. But Ovette Wilson and Adrian Wilson, Team Wilson in the building. We've been married for 11 years, and this is my amazing wife.
So the questions that we have today are based on surveys, and these are the prominent questions that people have regarding relationships. So we are going to have 2 to 3 minutes per couple to answer these questions so that we aren't going too long. And towards the end, we might have bonus questions or some questions from you guys, if we have time. So we're going to start with question number 1.
All right, are you guys ready for question number 1? Are you guys ready? Yeah. Okay. All right, so question number 1. Should Christians flirt? And if yes, is there an appropriate way to flirt? We'll begin on the left with the Millens.
So, I think this flirting thing, first you need to define what it is, because, flirting can be a knowing glance that I appreciate you, or that I love you, or that you're special to me. As well as it can go to the other end of the spectrum that says, I am interested in you sexually. And so, if I am saying to my wife, or my wife and I flirt all the time still, by the way. But when we were dating, and I am assuming the question you're asking is, should anybody flirt with somebody in the church if I was an unmarried male? I do not believe we should be flirting. I don't believe we should be looking at other women sexually, because the Bible says, I think it's in Matthew, that Jesus said if you look at a woman to lust after her, you've already committed adultery in your heart. And so, it depends on how you define this flirting, or if you're moving around, just kind of go around flirting with each other, or trying to, you have interest in someone sexually or not. So, that's my take.
I actually define the word flirt, and it is defined as sexual attraction to someone, but playfully rather than with serious intention, or it could be to experiment with or show a superficial interest in without committing oneself to it seriously. And so I guess the question is, would you want to put yourself out there in a superficial way? Because that's the definition of flirting. And so when Ovette and I, we were talking about this question, and being educators, we always go to, well, let's define it and break it down. And so we began to talk about, well, what is the opposite of flirting? Because if that's the definition, and that sounds real negative, that sounds real flaky, that sounds real sex-driven, and, just kind of putting yourself out there and being superficial. what would be the opposite of flirting? And so when I tried to find the opposite of flirting, which would be a anonym, it was very hard to find that, believe it or not. It was very hard to find the anonym of flirting, and so I pushed myself to think about, well, what is the opposite of behaving without serious intentions and, not committing yourself seriously. And just from my own reflection, I thought, well, we don't want to flirt. Instead, we want to be righteous. We want to be genuine. We want to be whole. We want to show wholeness and wholesome. We want to be authentic. You want to be true. And you want to put yourself out there in a way that's authentic. You don't want to be misleading. You want to be sincere. And above all, you want to be real. And flirting doesn't do any of that. And so that's what I would have to offer to what's already been shared.
Okay. So question number 2 is, what is the proper way to let someone know that you're uninterested in the pursuit of you? We'll start here in the middle. Starting with the Charleses.
What is the proper way to let someone know you are uninterested? You be assertive. One of the things that I realize about people in general, we are not direct. And we can lead people emotionally on by not being assertive. If you like somebody, you like somebody. If you don't, you don't. If you know it's not something that you are interested in them long term, why are you stringing them along? To me, we just need to learn to be a little bit more direct. The Bible says, let your yes be yes, let your nay be nay. If you're interested, you're interested. If you're not interested, I like you. That's not where I am right now. Don't be mean.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah, I think that's important. I think it's important that we let people down lightly. If you have, told that individual that you're not interested in them and they still continue to push and push, there might be that time when you need to say, listen, you got to stop. But I think you need to be mindful of their dignity. Be mindful of them, because if a gentleman come to you and say, I like you and I'm interested in you, and you're like, don't just drop them flat. Just let them know, and don't say I'm not interested right now. Just let me know you're not interested, because if you use the right now and then because if you find the right person that you really are interested in, you're going to go with that person. And if you're saying you're not interested right now, and then that person see you with somebody else next 2 months or next month because you found somebody else that you prefer, that really could hurt their heart, a little more.
But I don't think we can stress enough that we need to remove ambiguity. We have to be clear. It's not you, right? And no, it's not. No, I went back and forth whether I would respond to this particular question just because of that. But I would have to share with you that you're not the person I'm interested in. I really would. But directly, because I think sometimes we err on the side of nice, and the person keeps holding in his heart or her heart that there's hope for them. There isn't, and we have to make that clear.
And just to add on a little extra, dating or courting in church is also so much harder because it's a small pool. And here is where you can tell somebody, oh, I'm not looking for anybody right now, thinking you're trying to let them down, and then you are dating somebody 2 weeks later that is the right person for you all of a sudden, but yet you weren't interested with that person. We play too many games thinking that we're letting the other person down easier, and we actually cause more hurt and harm. So we just have to learn to be pretty assertive and just be direct. I mean, I don't know how much other ways to put it.
All right, I hope you guys are taking notes. Yes. Yes. Did you have a question with this one? Okay. So I hope you guys are taking notes. You're supposed to say, it's not you. Okay? All right. So we're switching gears here, and we're going on to showing availability. From this question, we want to hear from the wives only. How do women show they are available without being desperate? Hashtag single but not desperate.
Okay. So this is a very tricky question, because if there is someone that you're interested in, and that person doesn't see you, your natural inclination would be, well, I want them to see me, so I'm gonna, this, or I'm gonna do that. But the way to really do that is to be you, uniquely you. And honestly, I feel like that person, if that person is for you, they're gonna see it, because that's what they're looking for, is that whatever you have. So being who you are and staying true to that, I think will go a long way, and in a better situation than trying to be somebody that you're not, and then that person finds out that you're really not that person. So
I would want to add to that, before you get to this place where you have to own your space, own who you are. You're going to stand in confidence right now where you are in singleness. I'm not tottering on the edge. I'm not afraid. If this is it, this is it. I'm going to live my best life. Okay? So no, straight up. If this is it, this is it, right? Because just like a dog smells fear, men can see that desperation a mile away. It's like, ooh, this girl is going to climb onto me, and she's going to, no. That's not what, you stand in confidence where you are, accept who you are, and keep building on yourself. And you get on your knees and talk to Jesus about this person, whoever you're looking at. And if that person God has prepared for you, he'll work it out. So I don't think there's some way that you're going to have to buy a certain kind of outfit and stand in a certain way and get your squad together to strategize. No, we're not doing that. You just be still and be ready.
And what I wanted to share is that what you dwell on, you become. So if there's an overemphasis and dwelling on having to date someone, be with someone, just, that fear that Paula is talking about, that resonates with you. That eats you up. That comes out. Like, I talk about the overflow effect. And so if your heart is filled with this desire, this desperation to be in a relationship, it's going to overflow, and it's going to show in everything you do. And so what you dwell on, you become. And just so I think the power of mindset, it says a lot. And if your mind is constantly dwelling on seeing being single as a deficit, then it'll definitely shine through. And I think it would be kind of interesting to hear from a guy's perspective on what that desperation looks like and how it can really backfire on you.
funny that you said that because I was going to ask if I could give a perspective. What a man works for, he values. I'm going to repeat that again. What a man works for, he values. The harder we work for you, the more we value. So desperation cuts the work that we are supposed to put in as men to show the value that we have for you. So don't sell it short. Let us work. Trust me, let us work. And the harder we work, the more we love.
So our next question is for the Charleses and the Millens only. How do you know if you're spiritually ready to date or court, and how do you know that you're not ready? Sorry, I'm going to read it again. Okay. How do you know if you're spiritually ready to date or court, and also what are clear signs that you are not ready to date or court?
Okay, so a couple of things. The first thing I would touch on in this question is, are you happy being single? She said she should have went first. But no, seriously, how do you know if you're spiritually ready to date or court? You have to be happy with you as a person first. I know far too many people who are so caught up in the idea of being married that they fail to understand what marriage is. It's like a fairy tale. I know people who have planned their wedding, they know their dress, and they ain't even got a man yet. You're more caught up in the dream of what a wedding and what a marriage looks like that you will overlook far too many flaws in you and in that person. Come on, saints. You have to be happy being you. You know God, know what your plans are, know what your goals are. Of course, in addition to relationally, because the question says spiritually ready. Is God who defines you, or is the person who you're trying to be with going to define you? And I think you have to be able to realize that if you're about your Father's business, you're going to find somebody who is also going to be about your Father's business, because God might have a plan for you, and you're more caught up in the person, and that person can take you off your ministry route because you are more focused on finding a person to complete you when God is your completion.
This is a hard one for me because Ramel I've never had a boyfriend before Ramel. And so all my friends, they were dating, they were in relationships, or they were married. And at first, like he just said, unfortunately, that's what I wanted. But then, which of course would show that I was definitely not ready to date nor be nor court. But with time, I honestly think, I know that God, he revealed to me that you need to work on yourself, on your insecurities. Before I met him, I wrote a specific, like a recipe, I don't know what you want to call it. Okay, I guess it was halfway. No, it was halfway specific, of what I wanted in a mate. You know, definitely kind. And at first, it started off selfishly. And I put God-fearing towards the bottom of the list. That shows I wasn't ready. But then as I, of course, like I said, continued to grow and continued to mature, that began to, you know, go up to the top of the list. But I will also say, be very careful what you ask God for, because I asked him to give me someone that loves him, and he gave me a pastor, and that's not what I was thinking about at all. But Yes, because Ramel, he already made a good points. But I would tell you to definitely, yes, know yourself. It's something that I'm still doing, I'm still learning right now, even though we've been married for so long. I'm still learning more about myself as well as him too, because we change every day. So, yeah, that's all I have to say.
Hashtag God has a bad sense of humor.
I think there's a certain level of maturity that needs to come before you even start dating. A lot of fellows like to play the field and see who they're, can choose from, because, again, there are a lot of women, more so there are more women usually available than men. And so I knew that I was ready to date because I knew I was looking for someone that I wanted to marry. I wasn't looking for someone who I could have a fling with, right? And Paul and I started dating when I was 19. She was 19. I was 20. I was 20.
Almost 20.
Okay. And I felt, I grew up in the church. I grew up with her. She was probably 10 years old or 9 years old when I met her, so I knew her. And trust me, when she says she was going to let you down hard if she wasn't interested, she was going to let me down hard. But I think I was at a point in my spiritual growth and in my relationship with God that she saw something in me so that she didn't just, shoo me at the first sign. And I saw something in her, a level of maturity in her that both spiritually and otherwise that attracted me to her. And so I felt like I was looking for someone who I could spend the rest of my life with. I wasn't just having a fling with her. And if you're trying to date and you're not willing to see that person as someone that you want to spend your life with, or if that person don't feel like the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, then cut it off. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. No matter if you feel like this is the last man or the last woman that's left on earth, if you don't feel like you can spend the rest of your life with them, and you usually know that within a very short period of time, just cut it off.
Who said it?
Okay, so on to question number 5. What made you comfortable in moving forward in marriage with your spouse, that person? How did you know that God approved of your relationship? And then we have some questions for you guys to incorporate, I guess, like the answers in them. What were some things you did in the dating process to make sure that you were sober-minded in your decision, like making the right choices outside of just your feelings? And how long did it take you to know that this was the person you wanted to spend the rest of your life with? I know that's a lot, but yeah.
We spent quite some time on our knees, both corporately and both together and separately at our homes or wherever we were. And we were serious about that. Like, that was not a joke. We spent our time on our knees because we both felt like this was a big decision. I think people spend so much time thinking about like what career they'll choose and what type of car they'll buy, which are what we consider big investments, like big decisions, but less so on the life partner, because there's always the out. There's always that out. We can get out of it. We did not give ourselves an out. And I remember my mother told us years ago that we have to commit. If we commit to this, it's once we commit to our marriage, we commit to it for life. Like when you're sick or when you're not sick, when the bills are over your head or when they're not over your head. The point is, it has to be a serious studied decision. It's not you're in the air with, oh, what kind of pose you're going to do for the wedding and this and that. Because it's neither here nor there. I promise you, it's neither here nor there. Yes, you want some fabulous pictures to look at, but it's nothing. That's nothing. Because I don't spend time 21 years later, look, yes, occasionally we'll take up an album and look at it and say, oh, this is nice, oh, we're so thin and this and that. But the point I'm making is that it's the life that we're building, which is what is critical. So even if you don't have enough for a fancy this or that or whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry? The clear signs for me, he just reeled me in. I was just going. The clear signs for me was that we were praying together and we believed that God was answering our prayers and that he had that plan for us.
And one of the clear signs for me was how supportive Paula was of me, and she was not willing to tell me that I was wrong. So
no, say that again.
She was not afraid to tell me that I was wrong. So that if and it's not so much about wrong in terms of our relationship, but wrong in how I treated others, how I treated a situation, and and she was being very supportive in even how she said it. She would come and she'd say, Huey, I wouldn't have handled it that way, and I think this is how you did, blah blah blah. So she'd tell me, I'm not in a fool's paradise with her, fool's paradise. For one thing that attracted me most to her is that she was so supportive of me, and whatever I was doing, she was just, I probably should give you examples of how supportive, but we don't have the time to go through all of it tonight, but she was very, very supportive. I know I could depend on her.
And we're going to move to another couple because it's not just these two, right?
So our love story is very unique. Some of you know it, some of you don't. But I knew that when God revealed that it was okay for us to move forward, we were actually on the brink of never speaking to each other again. We were on the brink of something that was going on that was really traumatic, and we were really about to part ways. Like, he go his way, I go my way, and I was okay with that. And through that situation is when I completely surrendered to God. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. It was not even about a relationship. It was about, Lord, I surrender to you, and whatever you want, even if it means that I am to be single for the rest of my life, that is so much more important than a relationship that's not meant to be. And so that was the moment that I knew that it was meant for us to move forward, because I literally stopped trying. And I literally handed it all over to God and said, whatever is to come of this relationship, I know that whatever it is to come, it's going to be in your will, because I'm giving it to you. And the healing and the mending that happened in our relationship, I was so sure that it was a wink from God, because I know the commitment and the surrender that I had handed over to him. But prior to that craziness, Ovette and I had spent several years being friends, and just friends, like no strings attached. I wasn't trying to impress him or be anything that I wasn't, and I think that just establishing a solid friendship where you could just be authentic and be yourself, and the good, the bad, me going through different phases of life, and that was the foundation. And when things got rocky, I think the foundation that we had already established through friendship is what really sustained us. So two-part answer. One is just that surrender to God and giving it over to him, and you will be amazed at what he can and will do once you give everything, literally. I mean, for me, I said to God, I don't care if it is meant for me to be single, if that is your will for my life. I know that it's ordained and it's blessed by you, and it's going to be so much greater than this moment, that moment that I was experiencing. And God just really wanted all of me. He wanted me to surrender and give it to him. So I had to move out the way so that he can do what he needed to do.
I just want to add one simple point. The person you marry, at the time you marry, reveals your spiritual condition. And it's really critical because it begins to shape, like there's a couple decisions that like shape the trajectory of your existence. One, your acceptance of Christ. Two, who you marry. Like those two right there, they define a lot of who you are and who you become. And so it's very critical that you enter them like very wise. So, food for thought.
For me, it says making the right choice outside of just feelings. For me, family is important to me. So for me, was how well Sasha would fit in my family dynamic. And, bringing Sasha around both sides of my family, my mom's side and my dad's side of the family, all of us extremely close. And just to see how well they gravitate towards Sasha and see pretty much they love her more than they love me, per se. So that was my sign that, this is a person for me.
Okay, so our next question is for the Jameses and the Wilsons. When is the right time to introduce your partner to your family?
So you know what I'm going to say. So we talked about this question, and we thought that it really depends on your family. A lot of it depends on your family. It depends on the person that you're dating, their family. If you know that you're, so for instance, my family, I'm not bringing any Joe Schmo around my family. I just know that for a fact. It's just not going to happen, and it didn't happen. I brought Dwayne to my family, and that was pretty much the only guy that I was serious about, that this was it, like no other. But I knew that I had to do that, and there was a time frame that you have to do that, but that's something that you talk about between you and the person that you're with. It could be, because it depends on your relationship, right? So it could be a relationship that starts out slow, and so maybe it's long distance, or whatever the case may be, and so maybe it takes time to develop the relationship between the two of you, and then once you're comfortable, then going ahead with family and all of that. There are some families where they're like, bring them over, day one, they're just friends and whatever. Kudos to those families too. So I think it really just depends on the family dynamic, who you're dating, what you guys decide, and then you go from there. You make a decision from there.
All behaviors have purpose. Like every behavior has purpose. So you taking somebody to the house to meet mama or papa, there better be some purpose behind it. It can't be casual. I'm sorry. I just don't think that's wise. As a matter of fact, I think it's reckless. If I could give any counsel, is that when somebody comes to your house, right, not to meet your family, but to your home, you are opening yourselves up to that individual, right? They come into your home. They don't know, never been to your house, so you come on over. Okay, they came to your house. Boom. It's an invitation in. It is the same thing with bringing somebody to your family. It is literally bringing them into your life. And so I just don't think it's something to just be reckless with. I think it needs to be entered in with a high level of intentionality.
Okay, question number 7. How far into your marriage was your first real fight? And how did you resolve the issue? Not the little cute fights, but the ugly fight. How far into your marriage was that first fight? And how did you guys resolve the issue?
You know, we spoke about this one, and honestly, we can't remember.
Yeah, we said the same thing. We couldn't remember. Yeah.
But there's principles when it comes to your arguments. Those are, you want to hear a principle about arguments. Those are what happen.
I'll say it this way. In a relationship, you have to have communication. If you can't talk, you can't fix problems. So for me personally, there's no major fight that's seared into my brain that we couldn't work through. Because as long as there's an issue that you're unwilling to solve, then therefore that's that one issue that's going to break your relationship. Make sense? So you have to be able to have an openness to fix any issue, any problem. There should be nothing too big that you can't work through. So, yeah, like we don't even remember what the first real fight was. I mean, we have a lot of other ones, but it's like, I don't know, I couldn't pinpoint exactly when was our real fight, how long into the relationship, or even how we fixed it. We talked it through. It's literally about recognizing that you're a team. Anybody who's did marriage counseling with me would know you're a team. There are times in sports when you might score on your own team, but that's an exception to the rule. Your goal is to defeat the other team. So just because you may have scored on your team at one point doesn't mean that that's the general rule. You have to keep on refocusing on what is your goal, what you're trying to do, and keep on pushing for that goal.
I'll give two perspectives. First perspective is conflicts or arguments come out of expectations. Like you're not going to find it outside of that. So when I say there's a principle behind it, there is. And when you join two lives together, you have two serious sets of expectations. You know, as small as you like the toilet paper up, you like the toilet paper down. Those are two expectations, and where you're going to find a middle ground, because you can't turn the toilet paper sideways. Well, you can, but I've never seen a sideways spinner, you know. So the key is how do you maneuver through the many expectations that you are bringing to the relationship or to the marriage. Keep that in heart. The second thing is, I always say that a relationship is tested and measured by difficulty. Not by when things are nice and rosy. So anybody could have fun when that's happening, right? It's when the difficult moment comes in that it really tests and measures any relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's you're courting or dating or engaged or married. It doesn't matter. Difficult, or if you're a church brother or sister, it's when difficult situation comes that test and measure the quality of any relationship. So I think God sent them in marriage to firm up the character, believe it or not, because they really reveal who you are and what you're about in your relationships.
I think Yvette highlighted something, and it sounded funny, but it's true. It's the little things. The toilet paper, like who cares, really, in the grand scheme of things? Yeah, I know. My husband, it used to drive him crazy that I would squish the toothpaste in the middle. It would drive him to the wall, and it's like, okay, I got it. So now I am very conscious about it now, like, okay, go from the bottom. Now I train the children. I go into their bathrooms, and I see it squished in the middle, and now it drives me crazy because it's just years of knowing that this is how it goes from the bottom. Squeeze it all the way up, nice and neat, until you get to the end and we throw it out, right? But the point I'm making is that it's the little things that will be the irritant. You ever feel a little, some little burr or something you go through, and gets under your clothes or in your sock, it drives you crazy. It's like, where is it? Where is it? But this is what, those little things you have to be alert about, that so those things don't cause a wedge between you, that it's just things. It's not a biggie, really. And I remember our pastor who counseled us said that what did he say?
That, you know, we might want someone might want a chair placed one area and another person wanted placed somewhere else, and we can have a big fight about it, but the chair doesn't care where it sits. So, you know, we are the ones that are relating to each other, and so that we need to make decisions about those things, because sometimes we allow third party or external issues to come between us in our relationship. I think we had most of our major fights before we got married. You know, my wife was, before we got married, was not very trusting, so she would not tell me about things that were close to her, things that involved especially her family. You know, she had a huge family, and so, you know, she would be having some of these issues that probably spill, but she would not tell me about it. And so, you know, those things that used to annoy me a lot, and I'd say, well, if you can't trust me, then it doesn't make sense that we continue. But I can't remember when we had our first fight one, and as I say, it's just those little things that you have that will, unless you talk about them and talk through them, they can become a mountain in your relationship and destroy the relationship. But we don't allow it to do that. We talk about them, and we don't go to bed on opposite sides of the bed. We rarely ever do that. If we have any issues, we talk about it before or deal with it before we go to bed.
I think also, you know, we are going to always have conflict. And again, to each point, how you deal with it. And I think over the years, as a church, we have developed these different groups or these outlets where, as a couple, where we can go to and, you know, seek guidance and get help. And, you know, I always talk about compared to when we first got married. I think we wasn't the first in the church in 1 year to get married. And the help and the sublets that we have here now, we didn't have them back then, and I think it's very helpful for young couples.
Okay. Our next question is very related to what we're all just talking about, or what our panelists were talking about. How do you overcome challenges in communication?
I want to answer that one because one of our seasoned couples here in our church, I got this piece of information from them, and I thought, this is going to help our marriage, and it really did. It was to not deal with the issue when it is an issue, because we get so fired up, and we get all, but this is how, and the hands and the neck, and that, you know, those things may happen. I'm not saying it happens here. But I'm just saying, when it's a non-issue, when we've cooled down, when it's not an issue anymore, or when we're not so fired up about it. Yes, it's still an issue, I shouldn't say that, but we're not so fired up about it, and we can come to each other and say, listen, what we talked about earlier, X, Y, and Z, how can we figure this out? We've got to figure this out. Like, we've got to come to a resolve. So I think that's one of the things, as far as the question says, how do you overcome challenges in communication? By communicating when it's most appropriate.
Communication is very, very, very hard. It isn't easy at all. Ramel, as you know, he's taking CPE, or he's continuing the program, and he had to take classes in communication. And so now it's like where we were here, he's here, right? So I'm still here, and so Granted, I can definitely understand the importance of why chaplains must communicate, how they have to communicate with the patients. But when it comes to us, it's something that I've been struggling to do, because it's like, well, let's talk about it. And it's like we're on one thing for like 15 minutes. Something I just like, well, let's just decide on what we're going to do, or we're not going to do it, and then we'll just move on. But he's like, no, Mer, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So it takes a lot of patience, and I'm definitely not there yet. We're still struggling with it. With God's help, I'll definitely get there. But communication is very important, because it can either make or break a marriage, in my opinion. Not too long, well, maybe about a year and a half ago, I shared with a group of friends of mine that it's like we began to have a communication breakdown, where at first, I guess we thought that we were good, we communicated pretty well, but then after a while, it's like whatever I say, he'd say, okay, but then when I go back to him to confirm, he's like, well, I didn't hear that. When did you say that? Or vice versa. Oh gosh. I think that it's something that you'll have to continue, or I will, or we will have to continue to work on throughout our marriage, because it just changes.
I'm not gonna throw you under the bus. We're a team. But one thing that I would say, wherever you think your strengths are, the devil will test it. Whenever you say, I'm strong here, he's going to be like, oh, really? And he's going to try to break down, because miscommunication is the easiest way to have a big argument. And you're like, well, you said so-and-so. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. And here is where the devil will basically take one simple situation and make it so magnified that you get hurt feelings over a perceptive hurt that wasn't really real. Or, but you looked at me so-and-so, but I didn't say anything. I know back in the islands, they'd be like, well, don't look at me in that tone of voice. It's like, what? I wasn't looking anyhow. I was just looking at you. But communication is key. At some point, you have to be determined to not be comfortable where you are. If you ever think in a relationship that you've hit your peak in any area, you are up for a big disappointment. You have to keep on growing. You have to keep on reading, keep on learning, keep on trusting each other. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it will get weaker. You have to keep on exercising your communication skills, because that's the only way you're really going to be able to solve problems. If you can't deal with small problems, you can't deal with big ones.
And I take it you all get it already, that communication is challenging in any relationships, and any relationship. And, Paula and I, I'm very passionate, and Paula is very passionate. And so, sometimes we fall short in how we communicate, being effective in communicating with each other. But I think our 40s have been the best, I would say, time in my life, in our marriage. And that doesn't mean we had bad marriage in the 30s and 20s, because I mean, if I should do this again, I just want to do it over with her, because I think overall we have a great marriage. As you develop in your marriage and with time, you get to know and understand each other more. And so that even what you would do 20 or 10 years ago that, annoys your spouse, you no longer, do it. You kind of work around those things that that impact that will have a negative impact on the marriage or an impact on the relationship. And so it helps to decrease the number of conflicts that we have that result in just passionate communication.
I'm going to add two quick perspectives. The first one is your conversation is your relationship. It is. Like there's nothing outside of the conversation. The conversation makes the relationship. And so literally you have to always be intentional about the way you approach it. The Bible says love is patient and kind. And every attribute comes out of those two things. And if we apply them to communication, you got to be patient with communication and you got to be kind with it. And I think those two are hallmarks. And then the one push I would have is where can you identify the source of how and why you communicate the way you do? Because you learned it from somewhere. You inherited it from somewhere. You saw it somewhere. And if it's not what you like, you've got to be able to push and challenge yourself to say, wait a minute, just because I saw that, because remember, what you behold, you become. You got to be able to question sometimes where the source of your communication comes from, because maybe it's not healthy, if it's not healthy.
Okay, so I'm getting ready to ask question number 9. But before I ask that question, I just wanted to remind you guys that if you had any other questions for the panelists, just keep them in your minds and we'll get to those at the end of the panel. $12. 9. Okay, so number 9, what advice do you have for people dealing with lust in marriage or singleness?
I think in marriage, you have to look inside. Because a lot of times when you have your own little angst, for whatever reason, because outside of your marriage, the two of you together, there's you and there's the other person. And you have your own experiences. You have different things that are happening in your life. And sometimes people probably looking at it and say, oh, that looks so good over there. You look inside and train and grow what you have inside, because the same thing that got you to be married, and talking now about the people in marriages, is the same thing that can keep you if you're committed to working on your spouse. 2, in singleness, I want to say, stay away from those long weekends with people. Oh, we're going away on a cruise. No, you're not. Okay? No, I'm straight up. You're setting yourself up. Unless you have decided that this is the direction you're going. But if you haven't, then you're setting yourself in an impossible situation. Just don't do it.
Yeah, don't go over,
Yeah, don't do it. Because you're strong and just leave it. That's not for you. You're not at that stage of your relationship. That's not for you.
And, I would like to add also that one of the things that we as couples we stay interested in each other and try to be the right person for the other, so that, I'm not making excuses for somebody going outside of marriage, but if you're neglecting your home, it's going to be that temptation there, or neglecting your marriage. It's possible for you to have that type of temptation. I always say that you cannot lust through your periphery. So keep your head straight. Yeah, she's the only woman I have in my life. I'm not going to look in the peripheral. And I'm saying, and when I say that, I'm saying pretty much there are times when women might come to church or to elsewhere in the workplace or wherever, and they are dressed a certain way, they behave a certain way. But if I keep my head straight and I'm not focusing on certain parts of their body, I don't have any room for lusting, because I cannot lust through my peripheral vision. Okay? And so it's important that I keep myself focused, and I focus on her, and I focus on the Word of God too. Because when Solomon talked about some of those issues, that woman that talked about, hey, my husband take a long trip, and she dressed herself in purple, and she looks, and she said, the Bible in Solomon chapter 2 says she brings you down to your death, to the grave, and so it's not worth it. One night of pleasure is not worth a lifetime of woe.
I wanted to add, lust is a misguided thirst. That's what it is. It's a misguided thirst. And the Bible is real. I think probably one of the most diligent advice Scripture give is guard your heart with all diligence, because out of it flows what? The issues of life. And I'm like, man, the issues that I have is because I didn't guard my heart with diligence. Because, it's truth be told, we're adults now, but I was young too, and the diligence that I probably could have had or should have had, like that stuff, it creates issues in our lives. We typically don't talk about it, but it's the reality, so the misguided thirst is real. And if God is not there, trust me, lust is going to be evident. You're going to go astray seeking for that which cannot satisfy. So.
One of the things that you heard before, people, the grass is always greener on the other side. No. If you're going to water grass, water your own. The preacher in Proverbs says, drink from your own cistern. In a relationship, once again, the enemy is looking for one kink in the armor to attack. And wherever you allow that kink to be because you weren't maintaining it, he will find it. He's diligent in what he does. We have to learn how to, married or single, set your own boundaries. If you don't set boundaries, then it's a free reign. It's up in the air. Anything goes. But when you have certain boundaries and certain limits for yourself, and you express those to somebody who you're dating when you're single, at least you know you have expressed those boundaries. If you're not going to be alone with somebody after a certain time, or you're not going to be in their house past a certain time, you set those boundaries for yourself. You help them keep you accountable. If you see them not helping you be accountable, there might be a detrimental to you. So you have to continue to always look for that, because once again, that thirst, it's a misplaced thirst. You may be drinking thinking you're getting filled, but you're probably not.
Okay, we're going to ask one last question and then let you guys ask anything. So our final question is, can you provide some tips for financial success in marriage and also for single people?
I'll start with that one. Mercy. Okay. This is one of those things, I'll give you a two-sided swing. Growing up in my parents' generation and in my grandparents' generation, it was always, I will lend you money. And I could never understand that. If you're in a relationship and you're a team, how could you lend somebody else money who is your spouse? Now, granted, in whenever I do relationship counseling, I tell people, yes, you should have a joint account, but you can still have a separate account. All money goes into one account, and then you can divert the rest of the money, how you've allocated it, to your separate account. Make sense? Because one of the top 3 reasons for divorce is money issues. If you allow money to be your God, it will cause a rift. If you can't be open and honest with your finances, with your spouse, then there's an issue. My wife knows what comes in. She runs the finances. That's on her. Come on, saints. At one point, and I'll be transparent, because I had the business background, I would do all the finances. It was when Pastor, I forgot who died. One of the pastors in our conference died, and the spouse, yes, Pastor Sterling. Sister Sterling didn't even know the account numbers to her bank accounts that her husband had, because he ran the finances. She didn't know how many bank accounts he had. He had properties all over Florida. He had all these things, and she knew nothing. And after that happened, I said, oh no, you're going to run the finances, because God forbid something happens to me and you don't even know what bills we have. You don't even know what's going into savings, what's going here. To me, you have to keep on growing. Find another course, Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. There are a lot of different things that are out here for you to learn about finances, because if you're undisciplined as a single, you'll be undisciplined as a couple. And if you don't have a plan when you're single, you're going to be broke as a couple. You have to be able to make sure that you have your own goals and you're reaching those goals. Now, granted, people will say, well, keep your money separate. Well, if you're keeping your money separate, then you're already acting like you're single. And you're going to end up being single soon.
And to add to that, I would say be open and clear with one another on your belief system when it comes to money. You're blending together different belief systems, different experiences. One may believe in saving and not spending a dime, and the other may believe in being a spender and a giver. And so I think that it's really important to have a very open and transparent conversation off top during maybe premarital counseling on what are your belief systems when it comes to financial management and stewardship. And then the other point that I would add is transparency is really important. It kind of piggybacks off of what Pastor just said, that transparency is really important when it comes to the financial management of the home. And if the whole idea of marriage is that the two are becoming one, then that oneness should flow throughout everything in marriage, including finances.
So God uses finances to test how much we trust Him. Every time you read about finances in the Bible, it's about, do you trust me that I can take care of your needs? And so it's the same thing in the human relationships and marriage relationship, that finances is going to be one of those barometers that tells you how much you trust the other person. And again, you're coming from different perspectives, so that can cause significant challenges in your marriage. So Paul and I have never had a separate account. All our accounts that we have ever had have always been together. And to be honest, right now I don't know how the money is spent when I on a month-to-month basis. And it's because I feel I trust her with our finances at home, so sometimes I don't even remember when I get paid, or I don't know how much I get paid, because I'm not going behind and looking in the account, and unless we're having our financial meetings, and then I'll see this being spent and that being spent. I'm like, oh, what was this spent for, or where, and she usually have an explanation of how it goes, and the very fact that we are not. The collectors are not calling me. I know that she's been doing a great job, but there are times when she put a little bit to the side you know, and you'll hear, yeah, we'll be taking a trip, and she'll say, oh, I have this 500 right here that I did, you know, and we have a little extra, you know, but she manages it as if she's managing her own financing. We're not separate. So I have my money and she has her money, and this one pays this bill and that one pays that bill. No. Everything that we make in the house goes to pay whatever bills we need to pay. And if we are making any decisions otherwise from that, it is discussed. If I'm going to make a major decision about any spending, it's something that's discussed and we both agree to. We do not make any major decisions without talking about it.
Back off of that, having regular meetings to talk about your finances is super important as a couple. It keeps everyone on the same page. It lets you know where money is being spent. Like Uriah said before, I wanted to touch on something that you said, Adrian. When you're coming together, two people are coming from two different households and they have two different ways of doing things. When you're in a relationship, you have to be open to the fact that the other person has come from a different background, which means that you now have to form your own thing. So just because you did things your way, and just because she did things her way, because her family did it this way, doesn't mean that that's how the finances should be run. You're now your own. You're your own. You're one couple together doing this thing together. So formulate your own thing. It may be different from both sides of the family. And so I say that because we have kind of done that. We've done where I've done the finances, then we've done where he's done the finances, then you do some of that, you do some of this, like it, depending on phase of life. I might be too busy in a phase of life, and so he's doing everything financially. So it's an ebb and flow. Not one person has to do it all the time, and be open to the fact that you may have to be the one to step up to do it because your partner may not be able to do it. So just be very, very, very open to how the finances are run in the family.
Two other little key points. One of the things that my wife and I do, we also have like, what's a major decision? So basically we can say each of us individually is not allowed to make any major purchase over a certain price. That's a team expenditure. You can spend under a certain amount and we agree to that, we're cool. But whenever it goes over a certain price, because in relationships, you will have a spender and you will have a saver. And you will have problems. You have to continue to figure out how to make that work. One of the reasons why, even I know Elder Miller said they always had a joint account. My wife and I went through a situation where I wasn't checking my credit report. And there was somebody took out a credit card in my name. And our only joint account got frozen with all of our money in it. And I was like, the bills are next week. I had to call the conference office, be like, I need a physical check. My account got frozen. So that's why we still have separate, we have a joint account and she still has an account and I have an account. So we can still keep money separate. Why? Because you never know what will happen. After that, I check my credit report like literally every month. I got an app on my phone. I'm checking my credit score monthly, weekly. Sometimes it depends on if I want to make sure that my score is at a certain point. I'm checking it daily. I know what's on my credit report now, but it's bad that you have to get burnt in order to make better choices. So make sure that you're wise. Always have those family meetings. Talk about money. If you're not talking about money, if you're not talking about anything, that's how the enemy is going to use to cause a rift in your relationship. So make sure you have caps on what is a large purchase. You set that. I know people like purses, people like shoes, people like gadgets. Come on, saints. Yeah. When I bought my laptop, I went to my wife, I need a new laptop. It's going to cost $1,400, $1,600. Like, what? Why don't you get a PC? I'm not getting a PC. Amen.
It's not only joint account, also, you touch on a good point with financial, your credit score and stuff like that. I think as a couple, you know, you have to sit down and figure out how you're going to balance purchases and how it's going to affect your credit rating. So, for example, you know, you're not going to stack both of you guys with all of the big purchases, the home, the cars, the rental properties if you have one, or whatever the case may be. So you have to figure out how you're going to balance things. So Sasha may put the car in her name to leave my credit free for if something comes up down the road. So that's stuff you have to talk about also.
Been waiting patiently. I'll make it really quick though. And our finances have joint custody in our house. So there are things that Ovette takes care of. There are things that I take care of. We have those regular conversations, but even those small purchases can add up over time if they're consistent and repetitive, and it's very easy for those small purchases to fall under the radar. Let's just be honest. And so we do an annual vision retreat, and we've been doing this for about 5 years now. And we do it at the beginning of the year, and it's really to have a transparent conversation about everything. Like, let's put everything on the table. What's good, what's not good. You come like with your bootstraps on, ready to just receive. And the vision retreat at the beginning of this year, Ovette does not know this, but there was a time during our vision retreat where I got really nervous, and it was about the finances. And Ovette wanted to know everything. He wanted to know all my monthly expenses that were under that limit, because we have that rule too. Like, if it's under this amount, you don't need to talk about it. And so I got real nervous because I was like, man, I got to tell him about the hair, the nails, how much my sew-in costs, how much the hair costs that he don't even know about because it's technically underneath, you know, when I go to dealers, oh, it's just $25, you know. And I took a deep breath and I told him everything. And I was ready for him to lay down the hammer and be like, no, you can't get your hair done every month. And it was freedom because I got it out, but it was very interesting because he came, like what you were saying, Sasha, and was very open, like, okay, well, then let's look at the bigger picture. Like, are we not able to pay our light bill because, you know, of these expenses, and do we need to make some adjustments? Like, really, do you need all of that? And so I just, again, echo like the whole transparency thing and being open and being honest. And sometimes if we are the spender, we do need to have those conversations and kind of come back and level set because maybe you're kind of getting a little out of control. But we find that the annual vision retreat is just a really good time for us to come and talk about a lot of these things that you all have asked questions about as it relates to our marriage and strengthening it.
I just have one quick point, and I wish someone had told me this when I first got out of college and started working. I wish someone had told me this when I first got married. So I'm going to tell you. The first thing is you got to start putting away some coins. You got to start putting away some coins. And I'm telling you, the $25 you tuck away, or whatever the amount, even if it's $5, over X amount of years, it adds up. The second thing, when you get married, the same thing, whether it's 401k or whatever, okay, you need to tuck something away. Because guess what? I'm realizing I was 19, 18 when I first got to Tampa. I'm about to be 40. I have 2 kids. They have to go to school. We are retiring in X amount of years. Like, life is real. And so, like, no one goes to war without counting the cost, Jesus says. And so, you know, counting the cost is real. And fortunate, I'm married to a planner. And so she had us sit down and have those conversations with a financial planner to make sure that we're planning for the future and not just willy-dilly and thinking that we're going to live forever or finances will always be there or whatever the case may be. So I just wish I had heard that when I first started my job, because you don't miss it. If you tuck it away and it just comes out of your check, believe it or not, you just adjust life and you make it happen. So food for thought.
to piggyback real quick, I actually had somebody told me that if you take your refund check, which you don't have, and just invest it, just leave it, that will actually help you become a millionaire. So whenever you get a refund check, act like it's not yours. Put it in an investment. It might be hard month to month, but you'll be rich at the end. Come on, Saints.
With your increases, I think if you every year if you get 3 or 4% increase, if you take that increase and invest it in your 401k, over time, it will show up.
And believe it or not, iron sharpens iron. Because, man, Dwayne has been talking about that stuff since we were like boys, young boys. He always tuck away some coins. Like, if you know Dwayne tucking away some coins. So, believe it or not, being around like-minded people does help your marriage in so many ways.
You know, don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Because I'm telling you, or the Jameses, okay, that is going to lead you into poverty. The other day my truck stopped on me, and my wife still getting at me how much I'm mourning about that truck, that the truck had gone through so much, and just say, you know, I've had it such a long time, etc. But I wasn't paying any car payment on it. Now I'm paying car payments. And so for the last 5 years or so, I have not paid a car payment. What I should have done with that money was save it, which I didn't do, you know, so, you know, but don't try to keep up with others, because that's going to lead you to poverty. You know, just be good stewards, as Adrian said.
Comparison is the thief of joy. I got that from my wife. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes. Okay, we are coming to you guys with questions.
All right. Happy Sabbath, everyone. I'm RJ, by the way. So some of you guys might think I'm Ofinson. He's not here. So in marriage, a lot of it has to do with expectations and having certain ideas in mind. But when you actually get into it, sometimes it could be a little bit different than your preconceived notion. So my question is for those that are not married or those that are engaged, for you guys, how important is it before you get married to talk about sexual expectations? And by sexual expectations, I'm talking about what you think you expect, what you think they expect in terms of the amount of times and all that stuff. How important is that? The reason I ask that because that is a huge part of marriage. That's what sets the intimacy and everything else. There'll be times, man, me and Rebecca will fight, thug it out, bro, and you know, we do what we do, and then I don't even know what we was mad about. You feel me? So it's important. It's vital. So how important is it to talk about the expectations of sex before getting married?
It's very important. Anything you don't talk about will bite you in the butt. So you have to be open even when it comes to sex. I know sometimes for people who are being faithful, come on, saints, that's something that comes up in premarital counseling. But let's be honest, most people, when they come into counseling, they've already been sexually intimate. Having sex before marriage actually keeps you from being rational. Once you've been sexually intimate, you lose the right to be objective. Like, you can't tell the person, oh, you shouldn't do this. It may not have to do with sex, but it's like, oh, but we having sex. You can't tell me what to do. No. You have to be able to, one, have those honest conversations as soon as possible. Be as open and honest if you're thinking about marrying somebody. You set those boundaries, you set expectations, you keep having a regular conversation. And once again, life changes. You continue to adjust as things go on. When you have children, your sexual relationship will change also. You have to be able to talk about all those things in advance. If you don't talk about it, it will come around and cause an issue.
So I'll start with an ideal. Intimacy was supposed to be creative in nature, right? So two people, and this is just the ideal, coming together had never experienced that. So it would always be creative. And because you've never had that, all those experiences should be just the first time you're creative. Am I making sense so far? But what happens is if both partners have had intimacy before marriage, it creates two sets of expectations coming in, which, remember, if expectations aren't aligned, it creates automatically conflict. And so what happens in marriages most of the times, if that's the case, is you're going to always have a state of conflict unless the communication is there to open up and the desire to work towards, because it takes work. Listen, greatness, you can't get it by accident. It takes intentionality. And so open communication is critical in this area, because if not, what will happen is, sexual frustration could come in, and once that comes in, it creates a toxic environment. Once that comes in, it snowballs. And the dynamics and the DNA and makeup of males are different than the DNA and the makeup of a female. That's even the whole dynamics in the discussion in and of itself that has to be placed on the table. And the insight of a wife knowing that, and the insight of a man knowing that. I wish I could just say this is just like a cookie cutter answer, but it really takes studying your mate and being diligent, just like how you were in school, because you need to invest that much time in your marriage as you did studying a book for some test that you were taking on something not as serious as your marriage.
I would also add that there's a lot of power in getting wise counsel and finding that couple that will be honest and keep it real with you. Because I think sometimes marriage is glamorized, that it's all of this and it's all of that, and you really need to find that couple that you can go to and can talk about realistic expectations and what happens when you hit this bump in the road and you're only 6 months into marriage, and you come thinking, well, it's supposed to be all peaches and roses, and no, we're dealing with. And so I think that at 1U, I think we have a really good support system of couples that are willing to open up and share and mentor. But I think that that's really important, because sometimes we're not really talking about the realness that comes with marriage, like the realness that comes with it. And if you are at the premarital stage and you think you know what your expectations are, but what happens when you're really in the thick of it? You want to have a couple that you can talk to and understand that a lot of what you may be dealing with is really normal. It's a normal part of the different stages of marriage.
Sexual issues can be a very frustrating thing in marriage if you don't understand each other or set expectations. Paul and I can't remember us having a discussion, though, before getting married about what our expectations were from a sexual perspective, because really we weren't sexually active. So I know that when I was getting married, that was something I'm looking forward to. I know that's something I want, over and over and over and over again. But really, I don't know what it's going to be like, or whether she was going to be, compatible where that is concerned. My argument is, and still maintain, is that if we are the right person for each other, and we seek to be the right person for each other, so she's being the right person for me and I being the right person for her, then we're going to meet each other's needs, because that's what God expects in His Word, that we are going to seek to meet each other's needs. The frustration more often comes because of what, Pastor said, and I don't remember who else said about, having engaged in a regular habit of sexual engagement prior to marriage, and especially if you have multiple partners prior to marriage, it tends to set an expectation for your wife that is unrealistic. And when they talk about one of the questions on there, what is one myth? I said, when I was talking to Paula about it, one of the myths is that you're going to really always get it when you want it. It's not going to happen. It just depends on what's happened. Life happens, and so we have to we make every effort to be the right person for each other so that we are able to meet each other's needs in our marriage. And it grows. It grows. It gets better with time.
Do you realize that you're okay? Oh, sorry.
Okay, so we have one quick comment from the audience, and then we're going to be taking an online question.
Mercy.
Hello. So I have about 2 comments to make, and one was about how do you show that you need to be married without being desperate? And my mind went to Rebecca. Society is telling us women that we must act a certain way, talk a certain way, dress a certain way for us to attract somebody. That is a lie. Just be who you are, mind your own business in Christ. He'll bring the right person to you. And then there is this one you are talking about, finances. There is a wind out there, and I'm talking to ladies, I'm being real. There is a wind out here that the man's money is our money, but my money is my money. Please don't fall for it, because when you get married, you're really serious about you keeping that marriage and loving that man, that money gotta be the family money too. So don't listen to noise out here as a Christian woman. Let the money be used in the family. About sex, many of us watch movies. Sex made in Hollywood is not going to happen in marriage. So go there expecting not to receive, but go to give. So as married couples, when you want to give, it's even better than when you expect to receive.
Okay, so we're going to take the online question next, and then we had another question in the audience.
All right, from online we have, what do you do when your spouse failed to meet your expectations? What do you do when your spouse fails to meet your expectations?
So I think that's a very fair question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push back a little bit, okay? Expectations, first of all, I'll ask you a question to think about real quick, and then we'll move on. Where does your expectations come from? So you got to pause and think about that for a second, because they are born out of what we have experienced. And so what we have experienced shapes our expectations. Now, what if what you experienced wasn't supposed to be what you should experience? Or what you experience isn't necessarily the gospel or supposed to be the only way or the only form? In other words, you're only supposed to eat rice and peas. No, when there's brown rice, there's yellow rice, there's black rice, there's ginger rice, there's all kinds of rice. There's yellow rice. There's coconut water rice. There's so many rices. And when you think that only rice and peas exist, there's a problem. So what's happening possibly is that there could be a fixed mindset that has crippled you to be more open than you should, and it may be causing some conflicts unnecessarily. So there's some questions, there's some push I'm going to push to you to just consider. I'm wondering, is it really your wife, or I'm wondering, is it really what you think it has to be because you've been acculturized a certain way?
We're only taking 2 responses for the rest of the questions, by the way. 2 couples.
And that's for the online one, right? And the question was, what do you do when your spouse doesn't meet your expectations? Okay. Counseling, therapy. The church can't fix all your problems.
Hey, I have a question right here.
Okay, hi. What should a wife do in a relationship that a girlfriend shouldn't? So basically, what's the difference between a wife and a girlfriend?
A whole lot.
Well, I'm gonna give it from the male perspective. Like this whole thing, like social media, everybody is bae, right? If you're a girlfriend, you shouldn't be washing a man's clothes. That's not your job. Leave wife stuff for wife stuff. Because if you're giving him wife stuff, he's gonna expect other wife things too. And then he's getting everything for free with no commitment. But once again, you have to be able to set your own standard because it will vary from different people. Now, you can be dating and cook for somebody. We're not saying that's overboard, but if you're doing it every day for every meal, there's a problem there. So you have to be able to set those expectations for yourself. Boundaries.
Okay, did we have any more questions?
We have another question online. The next question is, was there ever a moment when your goals and your spouse's goals were not aligned?
Well, from our perspective, I can't think of a time when our goals weren't aligned. You know, we had spiritual goals, and I feel like whatever we have committed to God has to be aligned with God's will. And so our goals about how we spend our money, for example, was governed by how God expects us to use our finances. So, you know, I'm a giver, and I think my wife is a giver because that's what God expects of us. You know, so if there's somebody in need and she comes to me and she say, hey, we don't have a lot of money, blah, 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 but this person is in need, she knows what my answer is going to be, you know, of course within reason, because we still got to pay our bills. And so, you know, our goals about, you know, our careers, our goals about major spending, our goals about having children and all that, you know, I think they were all aligned because we were committed to doing the will of God in the choices that we make.
I think one solution I could give is doing a vision retreat every year helps to level set the goals. And so, you know, if you lay out the goals for your finances, the goals for intimacy, goals for spirituality, your goals for the children, the goals for education, the goals for finances, I mean, you have then a level set expectation for that year. So it really helps to like mitigate a lot of the conflict because you set the goals together at the top of the year. And then you could progress monitor the goals during the year. Typically, you could have a 3-month review, a 6-month review, or whatever the case may be that works within your schedule. But I think that would really help with the goals being aligned, because if goals are misaligned, then you're going to have another set of problems because one person is going left, the other person is not agreeing with the goal, and conflicts are going to come up.
I wanted to go back to the beginning of the panel
And I know, like, I'm married, but sometimes I feel like the responses to the singles are a little skewed. I don't know if it's because y'all been married for so long. So am I to understand that based on the flirt question that nobody on the panel flirted with one another prior to you becoming an item or you becoming married? And if not, how did you show interest? How did you let the other person know that you were interested in them if there was no flirting? Or maybe we define flirting then differently. I know you read a definition, and you did mention that it had a negative connotation. But how then did you show or express that interest? Was it just, I like you? What did you do?
Well, okay, so the question was, should Christians flirt? It didn't necessarily ask if we flirted.
But y'all are Christians.
So we gave the answer according to what it said. I think Ovette might have did more flirting than me, honestly, because he chased. I didn't do much. I was his friend, and there were times where I'd be like, you ain't serious, don't call me no more. And I would literally put him on block. It was hard sometimes because we worked at the same school, but I made him work, and I wasn't I had a lot going on. I was in school, coming out of a very difficult relationship, and so I don't know. I don't say I flirted with him. I think in retrospect, it was a lot of him doing the work.
Okay, but there comes a point where I know, and I will, but there comes a point when you got to let them know, like, you're getting somewhere. So what was you're getting
at the courting stage, you want to know, like, time-wise? How do you get to the courting stage?
So, you went from him chasing to courting straight?
No, we were friends for a couple of years.
Right, so when he chased, what was your indication to him that the chase is working? I like you
He was consistent. That list, like I think Merlon was talking about, and a lot of us as single women, we have that list. He checked out. A lot of the things checked out.
What did you do, Adrian? What did you do, Adrian? Make it plain. I want to know what did you do to show?
What did I do? I accepted it. We went on a date. Did we hug? Did we kiss? I mean, what are y'all wanting to know?
So let me put it like this, okay? There's a flower and there's the bees, okay? The object of the bees is to pollinate the flower, correct? So he comes, notice, the flower doesn't go chasing the bees. The bees go chasing the flower, right? Once the flower gets pollinated by the bees, the flower then begins to open up. And I'm just using that as an analogy. So as a male, one of the problems I'm seeing is that women don't know how to be flowers anymore. They want to be bees. But you can't be a bee and a flower. You got to be one or the other. So follow me real quick. If a woman is trying to chase a man, I'm sorry. The formula is getting mixed up a little bit. And so I didn't have that experience. I had to chase. So what happened, what evidence did Adrian give? Like, she was more responsive. She talked to me more. We could go out and hang out and so forth. Then one of the things that men have to do is we have to declare, okay? Like, if we don't declare, you're in confusion. So one of the things that, if a guy doesn't declare, I'm going to tell you now, there's some red flags. And are you a public declaration? Is he to the point where he could declare you publicly? Because if you're still in the background as a secret, there's going to be some problems. So these are like indicators that, things are beginning to progress. Because if not, hey, there's some problems. But to be honest with you, I think our sister gave a very important counsel. That is, there is someone for everyone. I don't think you believe that. Right? Do you really believe that? Even if you're in a single state, do you believe that God has somebody for you? Because you walk around and you see two couples, how did they get here? I don't have one. Well, God has someone for you too. But I think sometimes, like, what state of mind are we in? So, food for thought.
I just wanted to read a definition here that I found when I was looking up on this thing about flirting. And it says, to flirt is to tantalize others with your attention and to tease them with possibility. And that means flirting can become anything between the beautiful play of initial interest, foolish misleading of another, or even paving a path of sexual self-destruction. And I believe when I was dating and courting Paula, we were at the initial stage where we become, the beautiful play of initial interest. And so she knew I liked her, and I told her. We used to go, in a group and do activities in the summer with all her siblings and other people in the group, and somehow I would end up beside her, and we'd be, if we were jogging, we were jogging together, and we were talking and that kind of stuff. So she knew that I was interested in her, and we're talking until eventually, I let her know, that she's the one. I'm interested in her. And, she pushed back at that, because at that point we were such good friends. And she said to me, no, that's going to change everything. That's going to change everything. Let's not do this, But I didn't stop, and, eventually we both decided this is the route that we want to take. But, yeah, those initial showing of interest was a part of the flirting process.
Chase, or you want to call it flirt, with Sasha for about a year before she decided to say yes. I mean, it happens. I think it happens, whether it's to the point where where I don't think people do it intentionally to be sexual per se. That was my intention at the point, but we flirted, right? I know she did. That's what she said.
But listen to what he said. It took a year for me to even decide to be in a relationship with him. So he had to do the chasing before I decided that I was going to give up and decide to be in a relationship with him. So as Ovette said earlier, let that man chase. Let him do it.
And so I felt like I still needed to bring clarity to what I was saying earlier. I think that but everybody has their own unique experience and approach, and there's no cookie cutter way, and I don't know if sometimes people are looking for like the formula. There is no formula. There's four different couples up here, and we all took different paths to marriage, and we all had very different experiences. And so that's a very hard question to answer because it looks different for everybody. And ours was not a traditional kind of route to marriage, but I will definitely co-sign the whole chase piece. And at some point I said, okay, this guy's a good guy, I'm gonna give him a chance. And so then what that looked like was a date. That looked like, okay, we can talk on the phone, and we might talk on the phone a little bit longer than normal because now I want to know a little bit more about you beyond the friend zone. So he moved from the friend zone to okay, I think this guy is good. He measures up over a course of time. And then a date, and then, just kind of spending more time together. But there was no sexual chase or no leading on. It was really I'm going to be my authentic me, and he pursued. So I don't know what else to say beyond that. Is there another follow-up question to that?
Okay, so we have one last question from Courtney, and then that will wrap up the panel.
There we go. So you guys have been saying dating or courting and dating and dating and courting, and it's just like, what is the difference between those two terms?
Okay, so for me, there's difference. So dating is okay. So dating is more like a 100 level class. You can date in groups. You can date in smaller groups. You can date one-on-one. But once you're courting, you're basically saying that this person is somebody who I see potential in that can lead to marriage, and you want to explore how far that will go. Does it always get to marriage? No, it does not. But it is saying that I am interested in seeing how far this can go for somebody being a life partner. So to me, dating is more just a generalization, getting to know overall data, see how you act around people, see if your mannerisms will match with mine. Courting is now, well, I see you as a potential mate. I'm not sure if it will get to marriage, but I want to see how far it can go. So I think that's where the line is drawn between dating and courting. Courting is more exclusive. Dating could be you're dating multiple people, but courting is you're exclusive. You bay.
The pastor is talking about dating as in dating multiple people. I would say then we need to cross out dating. I personally think you should stop dating if that's what it's defined as. I think it's a waste of time. I think you need to be serious about your life and your spirituality to the extent where if you are having a date relationship or a court relationship, it's supposed to be with the expectation of marriage. And if you're just wasting your time and you spend a month and you see, or 2 months or whatever, and you're going out exclusively with this person on date and you don't think it's going anywhere, then you're wasting your time and you need to just move on, get out of that relationship while it's still early. Because sometimes we do these dates and go from one to another to another to another, and you know that in itself confuses us. So, you know, find someone that you're interested in, and yeah, take them out. Yes, go on a date, get to know each other, and let it be exclusive for that time. And if it's not for you, then get out of it. But this idea of going from Dick, Tom, Harry, you know. It's not right. It's not right. It's not right. It's not
Could I add one little ripple? The pain is in direct proportion to the amount of emotion invested. So you got to be careful. So when the Bible says guard your heart with all diligence, because out of it flows the issues of life, the reason why have you ever been heartbroken? The pain you feel or felt was in direct proportion to the amount of emotion you invest. You cannot separate the two. So that's why you got to be real careful, because you can't just be dilly-dally giving in your heart to everybody. Because then you just hurting it. Then you get married and wonder, what's wrong with me in my marriage? It's because you have damaged the heart so badly over the course of time that when finally you're in something like serious and committed, like there's so many insecurities that's like harping into marriage. So just be careful, because if not, it could be destructive.
All right, that will wrap up our panel for tonight. Thank you to all the couples that participated. Thank you to everyone who had their questions online as well. Thank you for you guys' questions. And if you guys would just please stand so that we can pray. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this program, Lord, for all the wisdom that you've given these couples to share with us, Father.
I pray that it wouldn't just stop here, Lord, but that anyone who has questions, Lord, would ask and seek counsel. Father, I just thank you that your name continues to be glorified through this and through many other things, Lord, through their marriages, etc. Father, I pray that you would help us to all get home safely, and in your holy, gracious name, I do pray, amen. And one announcement, there is AY next week, a third Sabbath, so see you guys then.